It had been 7 months since Clara and her roommate, Jenna, had moved into the quaint two-story house nestled in a quiet neighborhood. At first, the charming facade and spacious layout had captivated them, but the allure of their new home quickly faded, overshadowed by the incessant noise and smoke wafting in from the upstairs neighbor, Mike. Clara, a 23-year-old graduate student, had always been sensitive to her environment. Living with ADH meant that distractions were her constant companions. She had hoped that the move would offer a serene setting to focus on her studies. Jenna, on the other hand, was a 27-year-old marketing professional who thrived on late-night creativity and occasional raucous gatherings. The duo had crafted a harmonious roommate relationship, but Mike was the wild card that threatened to unravel it all. Their neighbor's table had become a fixture in the backyard, a gathering point for Mike and his friends. It was an odd setup, positioned on the old concrete foundation of a long-gone garage. The makeshift gathering spot became an echo chamber for laughter, arguments, and the crackling of beers being opened. Initially, Clara had tried to ignore the noise, rationalizing that it was just a part of apartment living. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the symphony of voices grew louder. It was as if the walls themselves had absorbed the raucousness, amplifying every drunken cheer and slurred word. Each night, the ritual was the same. Around 5 o'clock, Mike would summon his friends, their laughter and jubilant shouts cascading through Clara's open window, infiltrating her thoughts, disrupting her focus. By midnight, the chaos would crescendo, often spilling over into the early hours of the morning. "Why can't they just keep it down?" Clara muttered one night, tossing and turning in her bed as she struggled to find sleep amidst the clamor. She glanced at the clock, 12:54 a.m., another sleepless night. "It's just a few more hours, Clara. You'll get used to it," Jenna said, trying to be supportive, but Clara's patience was wearing thin. When the sounds of laughter erupted once again from the backyard, Clara couldn't hold back any longer. She threw on her jacket and stormed outside, her heart racing with anger. "Hey! Can you all keep it down? Some of us are trying to sleep!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the night air. Mike looked up, a mixture of surprise and annoyance flickering across his face. "Chill out, it's just a party! We'll be quiet!" But the words were hollow, and the laughter continued, louder than ever. The following day, Clara and Jenna decided to confront their landlord. After an uncomfortable conversation, they managed to implement a compromise: a 12 a.m. quiet hour on weekdays. It felt like a small victory, yet Clara was aware that Mike wouldn't easily adhere to the rules. "Maybe he'll take it seriously. He has to respect us," Jenna reassured Clara. But as the days turned into weeks, Clara's hope dimmed. Mike had become increasingly defiant, moving his gatherings further into the yard, but still close enough for Clara to hear every chuckle, every clink of a beer bottle. Then came the fires. "Are they seriously having a bonfire?" Clara gasped, peering through the window at the flickering flames. Jenna shrugged, trying to minimize Clara's distress. "It's just a fire, Clara. They're just trying to enjoy themselves." But for Clara, it was more than just a fire. The smoke infiltrated their home, swirling around the vents and making it difficult to breathe. Each cough from Mike echoed ominously, a reminder of the chain of events that had led her to this point of frustration. The nights grew longer and colder, yet Mike's gatherings showed no signs of letting up. The sound of laughter became a nightly ghost that haunted Clara, creeping into her dreams and pulling her from the depths of slumber. One particularly frigid Wednesday, Clara and Jenna were jolted awake at 3:30 a.m. by an uproar of laughter that seemed to split the night. Clara's heart pounded in her chest, and she shot up in bed. "This is ridiculous!" she exclaimed, her voice laced with desperation. Jenna sighed, rubbing her eyes. "Just go tell them to be quiet again." Clara's frustration boiled over as she pulled on her coat. She marched outside into the cold, her breath visible in the air. "I've had enough! Can you keep it down? You're waking us up! But as she stood there, shivering in the night air, she realized that her voice was drowned out by the raucous laughter. It was a battle of wills, and in that moment, Clara felt utterly defeated. The next morning, Clara sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at her laptop. The exhaustion weighed heavily on her, and she found it increasingly difficult to focus on her assignments. "I can't do this anymore, Jenna. I need to find a way to make him stop," she said, her voice trembling with frustration. Jenna, ever the voice of reason, responded, "But what can we do? You've already talked to him. Maybe we should just let it go." "No, I'm not letting it go. This is affecting my life," Clara snapped, her voice rising. The tension between them was palpable. Jenna's insistence on avoiding conflict clashed with Clara's need for resolution. "Then what do you suggest? We can't just go to war with our neighbor," Jenna replied, her tone steady but firm. Clara took a deep breath, her mind racing. "We could talk to the landlord again, or maybe even the police if it gets too out of control. I'm serious, Jenna." Days turned into weeks, and Clara's frustration reached its peak. The noise had become unbearable, and the shadows of Mike's gatherings loomed larger than ever. Determined to reclaim her peace, she made a bold decision. She would confront Mike one last time. As Clara approached Mike's table that evening, the air was thick with tension. "Mike, we need to talk again. This time I'm serious," she said, her voice steady. "What now?" he replied, clearly annoyed. "I can't live like this anymore. I'm going to take this to the landlord again, and if that doesn't work, I'll report it to the authorities. This isn't just an inconvenience. It's affecting my health and well-being," Clara declared, her heart racing. Mike's expression shifted, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You wouldn't do that. You're just a girl living in a house. It's not like anyone cares." But Clara stood firm. "I care, and I'm not going to let you walk all over me anymore. I deserve to have a peaceful home." In the days that followed, Clara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had taken a stand, and though she didn't know what the outcome would be, she felt empowered. Jenna, however, remained concerned. "Are you sure this is the right move? What if it escalates things?" "I have to try, Jenna. I can't keep living like this. I need my space back," Clara replied resolutely. The confrontation with Mike had shaken things up in the neighborhood. Clara's determination echoed, and the atmosphere shifted. Mike's gatherings dwindled, and the once rambunctious table became a mere shadow of its former self. As winter melted into spring, Clara found herself reclaiming her peace. The silence was blissful, a welcome change from the chaos of the previous months. She could finally focus on her studies, free from the distractions that had once consumed her. Jenna, too, found relief in the newfound tranquility. "I'm proud of you, Clara. You stood up for yourself and it worked," she said, a smile breaking across her face. Clara felt a sense of victory wash over her. She had fought for her home and her sanity, and though the battle had been long and arduous, she had emerged stronger. In the end, Clara learned that standing up for herself was not just about silencing the noise, it was about reclaiming her life. And as she stared out of her window, the warm sunlight pouring in, she felt a renewed sense of hope. Though the shadows of Mike's gatherings still lingered, Clara had learned to navigate the complexities of life as a young adult. The echoes of laughter had faded, replaced by the gentle sounds of her own peace. With each passing day, Clara continued to grow, embracing her strength and living without fear. And as she watched the sun set over the horizon, she knew that she was finally home. As the days turned into weeks, Clara found herself settling into a newfound sense of peace. The silence was a balm to her frazzled nerves, and she was finally able to focus on her studies without the constant distraction of Mike's gatherings. Jenna, too, seemed to relax, no longer walking on eggshells around Clara, worried about triggering another outburst. The two roommates began to reconnect, spending quiet evenings together, watching movies or cooking dinner. Clara even started to explore her creative side again, pulling out her old sketchbook and pencils. But despite the newfound peace, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that Mike was still a ticking time bomb, waiting to unleash another chaotic gathering. She kept her guard up, always listening for the slightest sign of noise. One evening, as she was studying in her room, Clara heard the sound of footsteps outside. She froze, her heart racing, as she waited to see if Mike would start another party. But instead of the usual laughter and music, Clara heard the sound of Mike's voice, low and apologetic. She crept to the window, peeking out to see Mike standing outside, talking to their landlord. Clara's curiosity got the better of her, and she opened the window, listening in on the conversation. "I'm sorry, Mike," the landlord was saying, "but the complaints have been piling up. I'm going to have to ask you to keep the noise down." Mike nodded, looking chastened. "I understand. I didn't realize it was bothering people that much." Clara felt a surge of surprise. Mike was apologizing? Was it possible that he had finally gotten the message? As she watched, Mike nodded again and headed back inside. The landlord turned to leave, but not before catching Clara's eye and giving her a nod of approval. Clara felt a sense of vindication wash over her. She had stood up for herself, and it had paid off. Mike was finally going to keep the noise down. As she closed the window and turned back to her studies, Clara felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had fought for her home, and she had won. But little did Clara know, Mike's apology was only the beginning of a new chapter in their complicated relationship. As the days went by, Clara noticed that Mike's gatherings had indeed stopped. The backyard was quiet, and Clara was finally able to focus on her studies without distraction. But what surprised Clara was that Mike started to make an effort to be more considerate. He would wave at her when he saw her outside, and even offered to help with yard work. One evening, as Clara was walking back from the library, Mike approached her. "Hey, Clara, can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked, looking nervous. Clara hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. "What's up?" Mike took a deep breath. "I just wanted to apologize again for all the noise. I realize now that I was being really selfish. I didn't think about how my actions were affecting you and Jenna." Clara was taken aback by Mike's sincerity. "Thanks, Mike. That means a lot coming from you." Mike smiled. "I'm trying to be more considerate. I was wondering if maybe we could start over. Be neighbors instead of enemies." Clara was surprised by the offer, but as she thought about it, she realized that it was exactly what she needed. A fresh start. "Sure, Mike. I'd like that." As they shook hands, Clara felt a sense of closure. The noise and chaos were behind her, and a new chapter of peace and understanding was beginning. But as Clara turned to walk away, she noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. Mike was standing next to a small, adorable puppy, wagging its tail and looking up at Clara with big brown eyes. "Who's this?" Clara asked, her voice squeaking with excitement. Mike grinned. "This is Luna. I just adopted her. I was thinking maybe we could have a dog walking schedule. To help us get to know each other better." Clara's heart melted at the sight of the puppy. She couldn't resist the offer. "That sounds perfect." As Clara and Mike started their dog walking routine, Clara realized that sometimes the most unlikely of friendships can bloom in the most unexpected ways.